imagine for just a second that you've been handed the keys to this massive, sprawling industrial plant.
Like a giant oil refinery or something.
Yeah, exactly. An oil refinery
Yeah.
or, a sprawling automotive assembly line. And alongside those keys, you are given a brand new workforce made up of 1 million brilliant, light and fast workers.
Sounds pretty good so far.
Right. They know how to do absolutely everything. Sounds incredible. But there is a catch, and it's a big one. None of them have a radio. There's zero central blueprint for the day, no budget limits whatsoever, and worst of all, nobody is actually in charge of the site.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds less like an industrial utopia and more like a recipe for just immediate, incredibly expensive chaos.
Exactly. You have all the capability in the world, but absolutely zero control over how it's actually applied. Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're taking a stack of sources specifically, a brand new white paper, and a really detailed product release from EON AI Ventures. And we're extracting the key insights on a massive leap forward in artificial intelligence.
It really is a massive leap.
Your mission today, as you're listening, is to understand how businesses are finally taking raw AI, those brilliant but totally uncontrollable workers we just talked about, and turning them into a safe, completely auditable, and highly beneficial industrial workforce. We're exploring the release of a system called EON Conductor.
And this is, honestly, incredibly timely for anyone working in enterprise architecture or, managing complex physical operations. Because Conductor isn't just another shiny software tool. It's actively serving as the engine for something much larger, an operational framework that EON calls the Intelligence Flywheel.
Okay, let's unpack this, because when we look at the core problem right now, today's frontier AI models are staggering. I mean, they are incredibly fast.
Oh, yeah.
They're highly capable. But as our source material explicitly points out, when you unleash them in a swarm, they are completely uncontrolled. If you try to run an entire plant's worth of work with these AI swarms without a central engine, what actually happens?
Well, they run away on cost, for one.
Right? They just burn through cash. And if a complex, multi-step task fails halfway through, the AI can't figure out how to resume it. It just crashes.
Just completely drops the ball.
And perhaps the biggest deal breaker for an industrial customer that needs to pass, like rigorous safety audits, these swarms leave absolutely no trace of why they made a specific decision.
Which brings us to a really powerful insight from Dan Lidgerskar, the founder and CEO of EON AI Ventures. He stated it perfectly in the materials. He said, raw intelligence is no longer the scarce thing.
Wow. Think about that for a second.
Right. We have the intelligence now. The real challenge, and honestly, the immense benefit that EON Conductor is stepping in to provide, is the ability to deploy that raw intelligence at a massive scale, to do it affordably, and to keep it completely under control.
So we know the problem is this uncontrolled runaway AI. How does Conductor actually rein it in? Because the promise here is massive cost effectiveness.
It is.
Let's go back to our analogy of that chaotic construction site. You have thousands of brilliant workers running around, but no foreman. If Conductor is stepping onto the site, Conductor is the foreman. It's basically the ultimate dispatcher.
Exactly. And to understand how this dispatcher operates, we should look at what EON was doing before this product even existed. Conductor is actually the formal productization of an orchestration method that EON's engineers have been running by hand for the past year.
Oh, they were doing it manually.
Yeah, they used this GUI system. They relied on a platform called Cowork as the planning brain, the part that looks at a complex project and figures out the sequence of what needs to be done.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then they used Claude code as the executing hands. That's the part that actually gets into the terminal, types the code, moves the data, and executes the plan.
So they had this manual setup, brain and hands.
Yeah.
I imagine that required a human, constantly sitting between the two, literally passing notes back and forth.
Right. And the bottleneck there is pure human stamina. Every single change they made was versioned and reversible, which is great for safety, but doing that orchestration by hand is incredibly tedious.
I can imagine.
It simply doesn't scale to the level of an entire enterprise. So, Conductor takes that proven working pattern and turns it into a fully automated, highly controllable, audited engine. Here's how it functions mechanically.
Let's hear it.
Conductor accepts a job, but that job isn't just some vague prompt. It includes a specific goal, the necessary data inputs, a strict verification policy for quality control, and crucially, a hard financial budget.
A budget limit.
Right. Then Conductor takes that major goal, breaks it down into dozens of smaller subtasks, and dispatches them to parallel sub-agents to execute simultaneously.
And these sub-agents, the white paper, uses a very specific technical phrase for them. It says they have resumable isolated state.
Yes, that's a big deal.
To me, that sounds like a video game checkpoint, meaning if one little piece of the puzzle fails, say one agent gets stuck trying to format a specific database, the whole operation doesn't crash to the desktop.
Exactly right.
It just pauses that specific agent, figures out the issue, and resumes from the last saved state while all the other agents just keep working.
That checkpoint analogy hit the nail on the head. It brings a level of industrial reliability to AI orchestration that we just haven't really seen before. But the real magic, the mechanism that delivers the primary financial benefit for a business, is something called the model router.
Okay, I want to push back on this a little bit because whenever I hear the phrase, we're deploying massive swarms of parallel AI agents, my immediate thought goes straight to the server bill.
Oh, absolutely. It's a huge concern.
Right. So does a model router actually keep costs down, or is this just a, highly efficient way to run the most expensive, power-hungry AI on the market for every single little task?
Yeah.
What's fascinating here is how aggressively Conductor protects the budget. It is specifically designed to solve that exact fear of runaway cloud costs.
How so?
The model router performs what EON calls intelligence allocation. It absolutely does not use the smartest, most expensive model for everything. Using a frontier model to reformat an Excel column is like, well, hiring a neurosurgeon to put a Band-Aid on a paper cut.
Highly capable, but a completely absurd waste of specialized resources.
Right, so Conductor evaluates the complexity of every single subtask. It automatically routes the high-volume, relatively simple work to fast, cheap models. These are your commodity cost models.
Like the basic models out there.
Yeah, they do the mundane lifting in milliseconds for fractions of a cent. Then, when a task requires actual contextual reasoning or complex judgment, like maybe synthesizing conflicting data, Conductor escalates that specific task up to the workhorse tier, what they call the Opus class models.
And what happens when a sub-agent hits a wall and needs to make a decision that carries, massive weight?
For the rare, high-consequence calls those structural decisions where absolute precision is non-negotiable, Conductor reserves those specifically for the Apex tier, the Mythos class models.
The really heavy hitters.
Exactly, the most expensive, highly capable reasoning engines.
Oh, wow. So it's dynamically shifting gears on a millisecond basis, constantly evaluating the complexity of the specific subtask and buying just enough intelligence to solve it.
Because most of a company's routine work runs at that base commodity cost, enterprise-scale AI suddenly becomes genuinely affordable. You get the brilliance of the expensive Apex models only exactly when you need them.
And you get the speed and cost savings of the smaller models for the bulk of the heavy lifting. That's brilliant.
It really changes the math for big companies.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Conductor is clearly this incredible cost-saving dispatcher. But our sources make it very clear. Conductor does not operate in a vacuum. EON states that Conductor is just one station in a much larger ecosystem.
Right.
It's the engine, but it is running a massive self-reinforcing loop called the Intelligence Flywheel.
And this is where we shift from looking at Conductor as just an operational IT tool to seeing it as a massive strategic advantage. EON refers to this completed loop as the Human 2.0 OS, or H2O for short.
H2O, I like that.
It's an ecosystem made up of 7 distinct stations, all working together to map and automate physical work.
So if you're managing a facility right now, listening to this, you're probably wondering how these massive systems actually connect on the factory floor without creating total chaos.
It sounds complicated on paper.
Yeah, so instead of just reading off a list of technical features, let's picture a single physical task to see how this intelligence flywheel actually flows. Let's say a worker needs to perform a complex maintenance routine on a high-pressure valve out on an oil pipeline. How does the flywheel learn and scale that task?
Okay, so it starts with the observation phase. Station 1 is called Genesis 3. Think about the traditional way a company records standard operating procedures today.
Someone's sitting there with a clipboard.
Right, someone sits with a clipboard, watches an experienced worker, types up a manual, and maybe snaps a few photos. Genesis 3 fundamentally changes that. It uses advanced computer vision to watch an expert perform that valve maintenance physically in the real world just one single time.
But watching a video is just pixels on a screen. How does it turn a flat video into something an AI can actually understand and govern?
To translate a single video into a procedure, Genesis 3 isn't just recording 2D video, it is actively mapping spatial coordinates.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it translates the human's physical motion, the exact angle of the wrench, the sequence of the bolts into structural data. From that single observation, it automatically generates a fully governed, three-dimensional, step-by-step digital procedure.
So we have a perfect digital blueprint of how the absolute best worker replaces that one specific valve. But, I mean, an oil refinery has thousands of valves, pumps, and sensors. How do we scale it?
That leads us to the scaling phase, which is powered by Station 2 scenario, Factory. Genesis 3 gave us the perfect template. Now, Conductor or Foreman takes that template and hands it to Scenario Factory.
Okay, making the connection.
It essentially says, okay, understand the taxonomy of this plant. Take the underlying logic of this valve replacement and adapt it for every single similar valve, pump, and generator across the entire facility.
Meaning it understands that a slightly larger valve requires a slightly different torque on the wrench.
Precisely. While the company sleeps, the AI is literally authoring thousands of perfectly formatted, highly specific step-by-step procedures for the entire physical plant.
Okay, morning comes. The shift starts. How does a worker actually use this overnight explosion of intelligence? Because having a great manual doesn't mean much if it's just sitting in a binder in the manager's office.
This is the execution phase. We move to Station 3, Field IQ and Brainy. We are back in the physical world now. The field worker puts on a pair of smart glasses.
So they're hands-free.
Completely. They aren't looking down at a tablet or flipping through paper. As they walk up to the high-pressure valve, the procedure is dynamically overlaid directly in their field of vision. It highlights the exact bolt they need to turn.
And as they do the work, Station 4 comes into play, Assess IQ. The source says it verifies competency from multi-camera capture. Basically, it's watching the work happen in real time.
Exactly, making sure they follow the steps.
But here is where things usually break down in real life. Let's say the freshly written manual says, turn the valve 90 degrees. But the worker gets out there and the pipe is heavily rusted.
Which happens all the time.
All the time. The worker knows from 10 years of experience that you actually have to turn this specific, stubborn valve 180 degrees to get the pressure to drop. Does the system just throw a red error code and fail the worker for disobeying the manual?
That is the crucial difference between a rigid software program and an intelligent flywheel. Assess IQ sees the experienced worker turning it 180 degrees because that is what actually works in physical reality. It logs that discrepancy between the manual and the real world.
It doesn't just ignore it or punish the worker.
No, absolutely not, because it feeds that data directly into the evolution phase. Station 5 is Compound IQ. This is the learning mechanism.
Okay.
Compound IQ takes that discrepancy and says, the real world doesn't perfectly match the manual, therefore the manual is wrong. It automatically updates the core procedure to account for the rusted pipe. The procedure gets smarter, safer, and more efficient every single day, directly based on the actual physical reality of the workers doing the job.
And who is managing this entire life cycle? Station 6 Conductor itself. It runs this whole loop en masse, acting as the heart pumping the data through the system.
Right, it's keeping everything flowing.
It's routing the heavy video processing of Genesis 3 to the big servers, while making sure Scenario Factory has the budget to write thousands of new manuals.
And if we synthesize why this entire loop from observation all the way back to automated refinement is such a monumental game changer, it comes down to a very specific business outcome.
What's the bottom line?
The ultimate benefit of this system isn't just that a company can slap an AI-powered badge on their website. It is that this loop turns an enterprise's own day-to-day physical operations into proprietary intelligence.
Proprietary intelligence, meaning data that belongs entirely to the company and nobody else has access to it.
No competitor could ever buy this off the shelf. No massive tech company can train their models by scraping this off the public internet.
Right, it's totally private.
Exactly. It is a uniquely generated data set of exactly how your specific company operates at absolute peak efficiency, constantly refining itself shift after shift. It creates an almost unassailable protective moat around your business operations.
That is a staggering strategic advantage. But let's ground this for a second. If this massive AI flywheel is churning out thousands of procedures overnight for physical industrial plants, chemical plants, manufacturing lines, energy grids, a major concern has to be flashing in your mind as you listen to this.
Oh, I know exactly what you're going to say.
What if the AI gets it wrong? These aren't just quirky software bugs where a chatbot gives you a funny, weird answer. If an AI-generated procedure is wrong in a high-pressure industrial setting, A pipe bursts. Someone gets seriously hurt.
It is the single most important question when bridging AI from the digital realm into the physical world. Safety is paramount.
So how do we know the AI won't just hallucinate? How do we know it won't confidently bluff its way through a dangerous, safety-critical task just to check off the sub-agent's goal and finish the job?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of industrial automation, a confidently wrong AI is simply unacceptable. It is a total non-starter for any enterprise. EON clearly recognizes this, which is why they heavily emphasize the immense benefit of what they call their trust and safety by construction approach.
By construction, meaning safety is not a filter slapped onto the end of the software. It is fundamentally built into the architecture from the very first line of code.
Exactly. Every single station of the flywheel ships with 3 non-negotiable guarantees baked right into the system. The first guarantee is it checks itself first.
And how does an AI check itself effectively? Because you can't just ask an AI, are you sure you're right? Because it will usually just say yes.
Right. It's inherently overconfident. You do it through independent adversarial agents. This is Station 7, Verdict, and the Integrity Suite.
Okay, the final station.
Before any new procedure from the scenario factory or any manual refinement from Compound IQ ever goes live to a worker's smart glasses, Conductor sends it to Verdict. Verdict runs adversarial AI. These are separate AI models whose sole programmatic job is to ruthlessly red team the procedure.
Red team it, like hackers.
Basically, yeah. They attack it, trying to prove the logic wrong, trying to find the hidden safety flaw. Only the procedures that survive that brutal adversarial attack are allowed to be published.
It's like having a team of ultra-paranoid, incredibly aggressive safety inspectors trying to break the plan before anyone even steps onto the factory floor.
But even with that rigorous testing, the second guarantee is perhaps the most important for human safety. It asks when unsure.
This is the anti-bluffing mechanism.
Exactly. Large language models historically have a terrible habit of guessing when they don't know the answer. Conductor is engineered with strict confidence thresholds. On any step that is designated as safety critical, if the system's internal certainty drops below a specific predefined threshold, it initiates a hard stop.
It just shuts down the process.
It will not guess. It will not try to wing it. It immediately escalates the issue, pinging a human expert to review the data and make the judgment call. The AI never, under any circumstances, gets the final say on its own for a step that could endanger human life.
That is incredibly reassuring for anyone worried about AI run amok. And the third guarantee ties directly into the need for strict corporate accountability. Everything is on the record.
Every single action, every routing decision Conductor makes to save money, every single update Compound IQ suggests based on a worker's actions is completely logged. It is completely reversible if needed.
You can just roll it back.
Exactly. And vitally, for these massive anchor enterprises, every action is automatically mapped to specific, legally binding customer safety frameworks.
The source material specifically mentions ATEX, API, and OSHA.
Right, so ATEX protocols govern equipment used in explosive atmospheres. API standards dictate safety in the oil and gas industry. OSHA, of course, oversees general workplace safety in the U.S.
That covers a lot of ground.
The Conductor system doesn't just log what it did, it actively logs how what it did complies with those specific, rigorous legal standards. It is audit-ready by default. If a federal regulator walks into the facility, you don't have to scramble to decipher black box AI logic. Conductor simply hands you the ledger.
So what does this all mean for you as you process this massive shift in technology? We've seen how Conductor acts as the ultimate digital foreman, dynamically routing tasks to the most cost-effective AI models to save massive amounts of money.
Yep, the model router.
We've explored how it serves as the engine for this proprietary intelligence flywheel, observing, scaling, and refining physical work to create an unbreakable competitive moat. And we've seen how it guarantees industrial-grade safety through adversarial checking and mandatory human escalation.
It's a comprehensive system.
Where is this actually living in the real world? Is this just a concept?
No, it is absolutely not 10 years away. Conductor is entering limited pilot availability right now, today in 2026.
And its very first production workload is powering that scenario factory we talked about, handling the massive overnight authoring of thousands of complex plant procedures.
EON is rolling this out very deliberately, though. It is available as part of EON's 90-day Human 2.0 engagement, the H2O program. But they are keeping the circle extremely tight. Cohort 1 is strictly limited to 10 anchor industrial enterprises in 2026.
They're proving it at the highest, most complex levels of heavy industry first before opening the floodgates.
Makes sense. The compound IQ nightly learning batches and the autonomous commercial fan-out, those advanced features will follow shortly after this initial, highly controlled pilot phase proves successful.
It really feels like we are crossing a massive threshold in how work gets done. We started this deep dive by talking about the terrifying chaos of a million brilliant workers with no foreman.
And Conductor is that foreman.
It is stepping onto the site, handing out the radios, ruthlessly enforcing the budget, and making sure every single person goes home safe at the end of the shift.
It leaves us with a fascinating, slightly provocative question to consider as this technology matures. If a system like Conductor allows a company to perfectly capture, constantly refine, and completely automate all of its physical operations into this unscrapable proprietary AI intelligence, into this unscrapable proprietary AI system, what happens to the value of human intuition over time?
That is a profound thought.
In the very near future, does a company's ultimate competitive advantage shift entirely? Away from simply trying to hire and retain the most skilled, experienced individual workers, and toward having the most perfectly recorded AI-orchestrated operational legacy.
Wow.
It changes the very definition of what makes an industrial company valuable on the market.
A perfectly orchestrated legacy where the foreman never sleeps, the budget is always balanced, and those million brilliant workers finally know exactly what to do. Something to think about. That wraps up today's deep dive.